We are sponsored by Soho Bistro and Lounge.
And I am absolutely honored and excited about this conversation because you really never know where it's going to go with Justin and I. But Justin and I have known each other about 10, about 10 years. We've been on a pretty intensely beautiful journey and witnessed each other through a lot of different phases in life and experienced a lot of the same things. And we co founded Revive together, which is really a beautiful accomplishment. I feel like, especially to what Revive has, grown into. Justin now owns Capital Recovery in Concord. So, all the amazing things. And we're just going to talk about all things God, plant medicines, spirituality, probably offend some people.
It's okay,
Be a little awkward because sometimes they're,
because I'm awkward.
just a little. But it's one of my favorite things about you.
Yes.
So I was telling Justin that the podcast is Pain into Purpose, right? So we kind of got to, before we get into all the good stuff, talk kind of about what got you here, like what got you into doing all of these things for you that you think, and in your wisdom that you've gained about it. I know that you have a lot of that.
So what got me to the spiritual path? Is that what you're asking?
I mean, right? I know a lot about your story, so without like exposing it, right? Like,
Yeah.
Justin is a man in long-term recovery, those things, right? Like, what was that, you think that like root pain or, that motivated you into completely trying anything and everything possible to, find yourself, to go within?
Sure. So I do believe today that we actually chose all of our pain, believe it or not, as an act of service to the people that might have caused some of our pain. And we can get into that a little deeper later, I suppose. But yeah, I was born, and my mom was an alcoholic, and my dad left when I was really young. And so as a result of that, I ended up in foster care, and I ended up in New Hampshire because I was adopted when I was 10 by some distant cousins I had never met. And before I got adopted, there was a lot of neglect and abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, and a lot of pain, a lot of darkness. A lot of darkness. I live in like a lit home today, and Halloween just happened. And obviously you can have your lights on or your lights off, and I grew up in a lights off house. I never even did trick-or-treating when I was a kid because there was nobody available to participate in child activities. So it was dark. And when I got adopted, they were very strict Catholics, and so they tried to discipline the trauma out of me. That like instantly I became the bad kid, and I got in trouble, and so I got locked up in Hampstead Hospital when I was 12 due to my defiance and addiction. And from 12 to 17, I went to 9 institutions. I was just in and out of institutions as a troubled youth, essentially, and using drugs or alcohol. So I am in long-term recovery. The first time that I ever drank, I specifically remember thinking, thank God there's a substance on this planet that can like make me, like untether me from my pain. So everybody, drugs and alcohol do serve a purpose. They do give us something that we desire, which is to be free.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, drugs and alcohol aren't the problem. That's your solution.
Exactly.
Until it's not your solution.
Exactly. So when I used drugs or alcohol, I fell in love with it because it gave me something I was looking for, because walking around daily was painful. I walked around with a ton of insecurity and a ton of pain, and so I started using, and when I did, I thought, this is it for me. I finally found something that, was going to give me what I needed, essentially. So from 12 to 17, I went in and out of institutions. I dropped out of high school when I was 15. I just got in a lot of trouble, and I essentially, I moved to Manchester, actually. When I was 16, I ran away. I ended up on Sullivan Street in Manchester. And I aspired to be Scarface or a gangster. I'm dead serious. I'm dead serious. Which I'm, if you look at me, I was more meant to be cast in a Disney movie, not Scarface. I look like a Backstreet Boy. But I aspired to be Scarface, and we ended up transporting. I was with a couple of people who like transporting drugs across the country, using every day. And it was, again, though, it got dark, of course, addiction brings a false light, I would say.
I also really loved what you said, that you can't discipline trauma.
Oh yeah, no, you can't. But
I-
there's a consciousness in this world that is too rigid, that thinks that outward action, you're trying to solve an inward issue with like an outward action, like a
Yeah.
masculine, when it's like it's not the way.
Yeah.
It's not the way.
No, and I've never really heard it that way, and I think that that was really like beautiful, because I think that that's what there's like two pieces to that, right? It's like a lot of the people that are having the trauma, like the sexual trauma, right? Like as a child, you're not comfortable, you're not safe to express it.
Yep.
So it mirrors as a bad kid, or I guess a bad kid would probably be the best, right? It mirrors as like disciplinary things that you need to disciplinary, because
Sure.
the kid isn't explaining that these things are happening.
Yep. But
So-
what that kid actually needs is love and safety and
Yeah.
feeling safe. And so when you discipline that kid and you borderline reject him with the discipline, you're doing the opposite. You're actually just causing more trauma. There was a period where I've had to process, some things from my childhood that weren't even that. I don't want to. I mean, I'm just going to tell the truth, right? So some of that discipline became trauma-esque for me because it was just more rejection and more loneliness. And I didn't think, when I did my trauma healing, or I continue to do my healing, I mean, it's a lifelong journey, right? So, but things came up. Actually, I love This Is Us. Do you watch This Is Us, the
Yeah.
show? Oh, man. But there are periods there where they reveal that things that didn't seem like they should be trauma were, because just inherently, by being in a situation and not getting what you need, it can become traumatic.
And most kids that are acting out in bad behaviors, it's due to something that's happening in them.
Without a doubt.
Kids aren't just bad kids. Like, it's a learned behavior. It's that feeling of rejection. It's that feeling of abandonment. And a lot of us, we have this like one idea, right? It's like, oh, it's being beat, or it's, being sexually molested. But if a kid feels abandoned because you're at work all the time and on your cell phone all the time, that abandonment wound in a child is the same. So they're going to act out to try to get your attention.
For sure.
And then you discipline them, and then it just amplifies that
Them being-
wound.
Correct. Them being rejected. Exactly. It's but again, these are mankind teachings that we suffer from because we're trying to fix things outwardly that are actually happening inwardly. And so the spiritual path is we actually turn inside out, not outside in. The human path is outside in. Everything from the outside will fix the inside. The spiritual path is inward out. So deal with what's happening inwardly, and then the outward action will shift. So
Your entire world will shift. The
For
way
sure.
you see the world shifts.
yes, but it essentially becomes a way of life. And so I think a lot of people are led to this spiritual truth, though, regardless of whether it's addiction or Amazon boxes, or it doesn't really matter what the outward action is to make you feel better, right? Eventually you will be called to, what does your soul desire? Who are you? And how can you, I don't think there's any true fulfillment unless you do live from the inside out, not the outside in.
It's how you turn your pain into purpose. How do you shift that pain into, you know?
Exactly, for sure. And a lot of that pain I would I believe, or what I know today, I mean, it's my truth, is that I believe that that pain. So I was born into an alcoholic home, and there was a lot of pain there, right? But I deeply believe today, due to, I believe this because I saw it. I actually had a spiritual experience where I did a past life regression, and I was shown this, but that we knew everything that was going to happen before we got here. And would I jump into the ring with somebody that I love and take on their pain as an act of love? Would I do that for my children right now? Guaranteed. I don't care what they were going through. I would jump in. So ultimately what happened was, and we know this, right? Through DNA and other things, it says in the Bible that people are going to suffer for thousands of years. The suffering's in your DNA. And so when we jump into this human experience, we're jumping into the suffering of our ancestors, of our mom, of our dad, and we take it all on, but we take it all on as an act of love because we're actually ridiculously strong souls and spirits, but then we start to have this human experience and we get weighed down in the physical, in our body and in our mind. But then that's the whole point of awakening your soul's purpose. And so eventually you will come to learn, or I came to learn. I had a spiritual experience where I did a past life regression, and I was brought before this lifetime. And at the time, this is interesting because at the time, this was about 8-9 years ago. And at the time I had rejected Christianity due to my upbringing and the disciplinarian nature of the way that it was taught to me, which isn't really Jesus's way, but sometimes, the teachings of Christianity from the Old Testament are very disciplinarian.
Yeah.
10 Commandments.
Rigid and fear.
Yes, correct. And so that's kind of the way that I was taught it. So I rejected that. And so I rejected sort of the religion as a whole. And so I explored other religions on the path, and eventually I really liked Hinduism because Hinduism is very open-minded, where they believe that they honor every other spiritual figure. Like they believe Jesus was a yogi, they believe Buddha was a yogi. They actually respect all other religions and kind of have a broader view about it. So I like that. And so at the time I was really into Hinduism and Krishna. And so if you had asked me like if you want like a spiritual figure to show up, I would have had some Hindu figures show up, to be honest. But I did this past life regression and an angel showed up, which angels to me represent Christianity, even though that's probably not even true. But
Well, archangels, there's like Christianity angels, and then there's like the archangels.
Sure.
Like
Well,
Archangel Michael and Gabriel and things
exactly.
like that. So.
Yeah, for sure. So an angel showed up, and it was interesting because I could look down, and it was almost like I was looking down on Earth before my incarnation, but I also knew everything that was happening in my incarnation. I was in the middle of my incarnation here. I was like 35 years old or whatever. And so I said to the angel, why? Why did all this bad stuff happen to me? Why did all this bad stuff happen to me? And literally, the angel said to me, who decided that you were sent to Earth for your mom to take care of you, and you weren't sent to Earth for you to take care of your mom? You have no idea who you are. And it literally shifted something in me that I've never forgotten. It's had a profound effect on my view of what's happening here, and I just think that a lot of us don't realize that. And so, obviously today I own a treatment center. I work in the addiction realm, and everybody I know, is taking on suffering.
Yeah.
But they haven't awoken to how strong they are. So the interesting part is they're in this consciousness where they're a victim of their suffering. They're just experienced their suffering, and they haven't awoken yet to how strong they actually are. The truth is, if you watched a movie of their life,
You would see the fucking resilience.
Exactly. You'd be like, holy shit, this dude is insane.
Yeah.
But when you're experiencing it, it's hard to awaken to that, right?
Oh,
So
I say it all the time. I say it anytime when I'm working with a client or people. I'm like, how many times, if you can just pause this situation in your life right now and look back to every other struggle that you've made it through. It's so hard to see it when you're in it. When you're
Agree.
in the battle, you're like so focused, right? You're like focused on the thing that you're in. But when we can kind of just remove ourselves for a second and see all the things that we've made it through along the way,
yep,
that whatever battle you're in right now is gonna be the same because you've got 100% success rate,
sure.
right?
And
You
ultimately,
do.
what you need is again, a thing that I've adopted over time here is I was taught about a God that was like external from me, right? Like a father figure of sorts. And I don't necessarily believe that anymore. I believe that I'm a piece of that God and that it's my responsibility to give myself, like, one question I like to ask is what would Jesus do in this situation? And the answer is always Jesus would love you unconditionally, right? So what is that asking of you? That's asking you to love yourself unconditionally, you to adopt the Christ consciousness, to embody what Jesus would have brought to you, you can bring to yourself. That's actually what we're supposed to be doing here. But every time we do something and it feels like the world's against us, it's asking us to show ourselves love and compassion and then step into the strength of who we are.
And, to circle back to what you said about the past life thing, it's like we through society have the picture from TV and things of like what the perfect family was, right? You're
Yep.
like the mom stays home, the dad goes to work. And like if your family didn't look like that, you already like embody this shame, right?
Sure.
And I believe that like when you said that about, your mom and you coming here to do that work for your mom, like I believe my son, Gavin, like did that for me. Like, I've obviously like stepped in as a mom, right? But like that shift in becoming a mom was the shift that I finally needed to see myself, to give myself something worth living for.
Sure. And I mean, you're getting into, are the children supposed to be our teachers and not the other way around?
Children are my greatest teachers.
I would agree.
They're they're our greatest teachers, even in their like freedom of like expression and like, when I do it when breath work, right? Like the breath work practice that we teach the 3-part breath, when a kid's hyperventilating, crying, what does their body automatically do? They're crying, they're so dramatic and they go, right? And it brings them back to the moment. And the freedom of just like, I was watching my kids just play in the leaves the other day, right? And it's like, where did we lose that?
Well, we lost that, believe it or not, though. If you look at the science of this, they know now that we know about brain waves. There's 5 states of brain waves. And so you don't develop beta brain waves, which is the analytical mind, right, until you're 7 years old. So children are living in different brainwave states and they're freer.
Right.
And it's actually is a spiritual challenge. But now they've done studies on all these yogis who can get into theta and alpha. And this is, again, this is a misteaching around meditation. Everybody thinks meditation is about being completely devoid of thought. Incorrect.
I say this all the time.
Actually,
That's not it.
No, you are supposed to have thoughts. It's just you're tapping into a different brainwave state where the thoughts they're not in a box. So analytical is black and white, and it's trying to figure everything out. And that's where our suffering comes, because we're trying to play God, and we're trying to figure everything out in our life. And how do we fix everything when the truth is everything's happening the way that it's happening, just like the seasons, right? And you're participating, and there's always a fix to something in time, right? And you can't find that fix now. But when you meditate and you go beyond the analytical and you get into alpha and theta and these other brainwave states, it's a big reason why we teach meditation at this point. You get into the unlimited and you go beyond time, essentially, because you can go on beyond time in meditation, and you will find answers. You will find understanding of what's happening, like without the solution, because what's happening right this moment is asking more of you to harmonize. So if you're in disharmony, it's just indicating that you're misunderstanding what's happening. And
Yeah,
so
we're always trying to put a meaning on something. What does that mean? What does that mean? Right? And we're always trying to figure it out. That person looked at me this way. And then we create that suffering through our judgments. And
exactly.
it's crazy.
Exactly. But as you start to meditate, even if somebody did look at you wrong and you're being paranoid about it, it's because there's a piece of you that's insecure that needs to just surrender to being. Because when you're in being, you're not worried about. That's one of the gifts. Obviously, we're going to talk about recovery here a little bit, but there's some, metaphysical things that happen in meetings for people that we just give credit to the physical act of going to a meeting. But the truth is, when you go to a meeting, you probably do get into different brainwave states. When you're listening to somebody and you get into alpha, who you are and what you look like compared to everybody in the room and all these other things, when someone can share from the heart who they are, all those things fall away and you probably get into different brainwave states and you're feeding your soul. Yeah. There's like a science to what's happening. Now, people get too attached to the physical act of going to a meeting, so then they lose the ability to surrender to what's actually happening, and they almost give credit. Now, here's where the ego takes credit that, like, when I go to meetings, I stay sober and I do this. And who's the I? The I is the ego. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So when you start taking credit for something that you're just harmonizing with all that is, you're off base. And this is one of the reasons that I personally, I'm deeply grateful to 12-step recovery. It saved my life, period. No questions asked. Right? I walked into a meeting November 25th, 1997. I've been sober since. If you count plant medicine, we'll get into that. You know what I mean? Which a lot of people wouldn't consider me sober, which is fine. I respect that. But I'm not living in shame here, Yeah. And but I became rigid over the years on these are the things I do and this is the result. And when you're like attached to this is what I do and this is the result,
the identity.
You're playing God. Yes, mm-hmm. You're wrapped up in the identity, and you're not really in harmony. But the problem is, you will be in harmony sometimes, because sometimes the firm hand, like the Buddhists teach, it's about firm or relenting, right? But it's about discerning that sometimes something requires a firm hand, sometimes something requires a relenting hand. But as mankind, we egoically adopt views as it's this way. Mm-hmm. Oh wait, no, it's that way. So here we are, we're about to have an election, right? And everybody picks views, right. And then it's the liberal way, it's the conservative way. And it's like, the truth is sometimes the liberal way is the appropriate response, and sometimes the conservative way is the appropriate response. It's both.
You can live in the middle, in the gray.
It's our job to discern and harmonize with God to give the correct hand in the correct situation. But our ego wants to identify, it's this, it's that. Mm-hmm. And then we adopt these identities. And so I became very rigid in my recovery that these are the things I do and this is the result. And yes, it produced me staying sober, which I'm very grateful for.
And you got sober at 17.
I did, correct. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. I was 17.
Yeah.
I was a boy.
Hey, I mean, there's a lot of 17-year out there right now that like could and should be on this path.
Without a doubt.
It's like I was 16 when I started shooting heroin.
Yep.
Like the first time I stuck a needle in my arm, I was 16 years old.
Yep.
So, and it's like, it's happening. It's always happening.
And again, it's about the awakening. So it's not even about the drugs or alcohol. Like, right. I would agree with you, if you're obviously abusing drugs or alcohol at a young age, then you probably should consider giving up drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
But it's really about the spiritual path. It's really about surrendering to who you are. I mean, I do think there's a lot of kids that potentially could not even become addicts or alcoholics or however you want to classify it if they could come to understand that, awaken to who they are and the suffer and that this is just a mechanism of escaping. You know what I mean? But right. We almost wait for it to become an identity, and then it's hard to unwind. Right? Instead of teaching them that this is a mechanism. Because the truth is, there are a lot of people who can use drugs or alcohol, yeah. And it's not an outside-in action, it's an inside-out action. They are who they are. They can drink an alcoholic beverage, and I mean, again, back to the science around this stuff, right? It's like, what's that? there's a it's like a scale. What's it called? There's a system that we have in ourselves, right? That essentially it's a balance of your hormones and other things. I can't think of the exact name of it, but essentially you're supposed to be at like 60 or 70, right? And so if you're supposed to be at 60 or 70 and you drink an alcoholic beverage and it gets you to 80, that's great.
Yeah.
But you're already at 60. So it doesn't give you, but if you wake up every day and you've experienced trauma and all these other things and your system's at 20 and you take an alcoholic beverage and it gets you to 80, it's a whole different experience.
Right.
Right. And so as a result, people who are at 20, and honestly, this happens to people, this can happen to people in again, this is a viewpoint around addiction that people don't understand because again, like there's some misteachings about addiction and obviously there's new science coming out and there's new things coming out, which I love. And that's why I work in the field. Right. But there are people who at 40 years old, their wife cheated on them, they lost their job, they lost their house, and the environment for addiction was born. But for the first 40 years, they could drink alcohol responsibly, and they were not an alcoholic. And then as a result of what's happening in their life and the environment in their life, the environment for addiction, the genes, they actually say it takes 8 to 12 genes to be turned on for a disease to actually manifest, right? Not all diseases. There's like 3 diseases where it's 1 gene, but the majority of genes, it's like 8 to 12 genes. And so how you're thinking and feeling and perceiving things in your environment do create the environment for it to be born. And so obviously if you grew up with a lot of trauma, the environment's probably already there for the addiction to be born. But there are a lot of people these days who everything was fine for many, many years. And then as a result of some suffering that they're experiencing in their lives, some crisis that's happening in their lives, the environment is born for addiction to be born. And then before you know it, they're in addiction, but they don't understand it because for 40 years, they could drink responsibly. They could smoke some marijuana. They could do whatever. And then as a result of life circumstances, but again, my opinion about this is that it's a spiritual calling. You should be grateful for it. That it's because it's nothing will ask you to surrender more than addiction. Like you either surrender or you suffer.
Yeah.
It just is what it is. It's not, it will bring you to your knees. Like once you cross over that threshold, it's like, it's asking you to awaken to who you are. And if you refuse, you will just suffer, unfortunately.
Yeah, suffer or die.
Suffer or die, exactly, because the pain will become too great, unfortunately.
Yeah, and you just want to escape it.
Yeah,
A
so
lot of suicide stuff, too.
I know, which we should talk about that a little bit, because I had an experience with that 3 years ago that my opinion about that these days is different than it ever has been. Because even suicide, so 3 years ago, I experienced some of the darkest places of my life ever where everything fell apart, right? And God was teaching me a lot about myself. It all had purpose, right? But I ended up in this really dark place where I was contemplating suicide.
I've been there. I was there like right after my divorce. Like I was like, what? With
Yep.
like, I would like
What's the purpose?
everything fell apart. Like I got everywhere that I was. I fought this battle.
Yep.
I was doing good, and then here I am, and like it felt like the darkest place that I had been in, even in the depths of my addiction.
I agree. I was in the same place. I felt like, yeah. And I was, and again, people don't want to talk about suicide, right? Because they're ashamed of it. But like, there's nothing to be, like, first of all, there's nothing to be ashamed about. The best thing for suicide prevention is talking about it. So here we are. Let's just talk about it. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
The more you talk about it, the more you realize how many people are like questioning the Great Escape. You think it's the Great Escape. That's the thing that I want to talk about. You think it's the Great Escape, but you know, doing the work that I do and where the veil is very thin, a lot of people that commit suicide get stuck. Your spirit gets stuck.
Yeah.
You know, you don't get to kind of like ascend. I know you're probably gonna
I don't know if I completely agree with that,
Yeah.
but that's okay. That's, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
You're
yeah.
gonna. I love when we don't agree.
Yeah. I don't agree with that actually, but
Yeah,
because
that's okay.
I don't put a what I know of God these days. I think God is not. There is no. I don't believe there's. I believe this is hell. Actually, I believe Earth, this earthly plane, actually is hell, and we can obviously bring heaven here, which is the purpose, right? God, I think, obviously, if we were in heaven right now, or oneness, let's just call it oneness.
Yeah.
Let's take the religious context off
Right.
of it, right? And oneness is amazing, but does oneness have as much value when it's just always oneness?
No.
Right? So it
I
doesn't.
experienced
It's like
heaven
anything-
on earth last night at the Firewalk. Like experiencing, like
Oh.
there's so many things in my life where I do get to experience heaven on earth,
I agree.
but also like I've experienced deep fucking hell on earth.
I
And,
think
like,
that Earth. I think Earth fundamentally, just by ego consciousness, is a place of separation. But it's a place of separation on purpose because what we really are is oneness, right? And I know you've experienced this, and I've experienced this, and we can talk about some of this stuff
Yeah.
with plant medicine experiences and other things that give you some teachings about this or give you some experiences that are kind of hard to have with. Not hard, because I've had other experiences of this, but it's, I mean, in the Bible, it does imply this potentially is hell.
Yeah.
It does. And so if you really think about it, where does most of the suffering happen? Right here. We're in it. And
It happens in your mind. You create it.
what happens in
your
your
heart.
mind, it happens in your mind. It happens due to separation, and it happens due to selfishness in ways. So every time that somebody thought about getting something from somebody else, if we just thought about it in this manner, right? Because selfishness inherently is survival, right? We do this because we're trying to survive. And so every time that someone had a selfish thought of what they could get from somebody else, if they grew a little bit of horns, what would this place look like? Everybody would be walking around with horns. This would be hell. Which, again, I'm saying that, again, though, there's even oneness in suffering. There's definitely oneness in suffering. Suffering serves a purpose. Why does humankind love songs? Because we all experience hurt and suffering, and it connects us with oneness. So suffering, even in and of itself, is a mechanism of oneness when you can surrender to it. It's almost like a portal. When we can just be it, when you go beyond the experience of polarization and you can just be something, it connects you with the oneness of all that is. Because oneness is really heaven or God, if you ask me. That's like, and so here we are in this experience of separation, of ego consciousness, but every time we surrender and just get into true being, we experience oneness. And so we experience it in very small, like, tidbits, right, while we're here, but that's the point. We're in an experience of the opposite of what we are. We're in an experience of separation, and every time we can surrender, it allows us to like experience what we are, which is oneness. We are beings of oneness. We are all one. We're all separate souls, but there's a, in the bigger cosmos, we're a collective. I think that's what I experience because. I mean, I had an experience the other day, actually, when I was meditating that articulated this for me. I did Halloween. I just moved to Pembroke, New Hampshire. Shout out to Pembroke, New Hampshire, because it's fucking badass and amazing. Just to be clear, there's something about northern New Hampshire. It's just a little slower and friendlier, and it's amazing. I love Pembroke, New Hampshire. So, but we did Halloween, and so we all dressed up, which is awesome, and it was just beautiful. It was just a perfect night, right? We walked around, the kids had a blast, we had a blast, we met a bunch of people. And the next morning I meditated. And as I was meditating, I went beyond my analytical and I revisited my past of child darkness, lights out. I mean, I just mentioned that, but I saw that the other day in meditation where it's like I lived in a lights out home with no joy, no no happiness, no oneness, right? And I like revisited my past, and then I visited the moment I'm in today, and then I visited like the moment that my children are experiencing, and it all made sense. I like went it like all became one experience where it was like the opposites of the polarization, but the opposites of the polarization create the experience of going beyond the polarization. And so I was experiencing my suffering as a kid with the opposite of my kids and the oneness in between. Like, and it's hard to explain. Some of these things are beyond the mind, really, right? So
I say it all the time, like plant medicine for experience. It's like no human words. Like it's really like hard to explain certain things that you get to experience in these different levels of consciousness, right?
Yep.
Through meditation, through breath work,
Yep.
even breath work. Like,
breath
you know,
work, without a
like
doubt.
altered states of consciousness. Like you have these experiences through connecting to different levels of consciousness. And you're like, did that just really happen? You're like, wait, I didn't even take a substance. And like, I had like a full, like, where was I? Like,
Exactly. Oh, I've had incredible experiences in breathworks, plant medicine-esque, right?
Yeah.
For sure. Let's jump into the plant medicine. Let's just talk
Yeah.
about it, right?
yeah.
Let's just go there.
Okay.
Oh, but back to
I think-
the suicide though,
Yes. Let's go there.
because I need to give you an opinion about the suicide thing, and this is not a medical opinion. Okay, anybody that's experiencing any suicidal ideation should seek a professional. I do believe this. You know what I mean? By no means am I trying to give any medical advice to anybody, but I am going to share my experience with what I came to understand. Sometimes when you feel like you want to die, it's because God is asking you to let pieces of yourself die. That's actually what's happening.
Oh,
You
I got
need
full
to-
body goosebumps.
You need to let pieces of yourself die, but it's hard because the pieces that you need to let die are the pieces that protect you, right? These things like this is armor because you've been very hurt on this earth, so you put on fucking armor, right? And so, but some of this armor keeps you heavy and keeps you stuck and makes life feel like it's like you can't experience the love you're supposed to experience. You can't experience the oneness you're supposed to experience because you're wearing all this armor. A hug doesn't feel the same if you fucking,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
I say it all the time. Well, walls, right? We build these walls up. We build these walls up. We build these walls up as armor to protect ourselves.
Yep.
And the thing about walls is yeah, they're going to keep out the shit, but they also keep out the love.
Yep.
They also keep out the forgiveness, the acceptance, the compassion, the empathy. Like the walls you don't get to pick and choose what those walls are blocking from you. The
No.
walls are the walls.
Exactly. But there will come a time and a place where you will be asked, and so for me, I got to the point where God wasn't having any of it, and I needed to let pieces of myself die, but it felt like I physically wanted to die. And I was experiencing ideations to the point where it got scary.
Well, it's the attachment to the identities too, right?
Well, it is the
Like-
attachment to the correct. It's the attachment to the identities, and attachment to these things are like make me who I am. These things, because what happened for me, and we'll tie plant medicine into this because why not? I mean,
Yeah,
it's
it makes-
what happened to me, right? So I did plant medicine in 2019 for the first time. Very difficult decision for me. Just to be clear, I had, I don't know, 19 years sober or something at that point. But I came to realize the reason that I did plant medicine was this, and we got to talk about the dangers of plant medicine too, because
Yes.
plant medicine doesn't come without
Nope.
dangers. It
I
comes
say it
with
all the
dangers.
time.
Yes, so we have to talk about that, right? And I'm open with my clients about this at this point. I'm not in the closet about it. But I had gotten to the point where I had 19 years sober. I had worked the steps 3 times. You know what I mean? I had gotten very into holistic practices. I had done breath work a million times. I had done past life regressions. I was meditating every day. I had done all this work, and I couldn't get to the trauma. I couldn't get there. Analytically, I could not get there. Now, again, I'm not saying this is everybody's experience, but my experience with the steps was, and one of the reasons that I couldn't even get there is because again, I have small tidbits. I know I was abused, and I know a few things about my childhood, right? I have no recollection of any event. Before 10, most of my childhood's blocked out. I have like 3 or 4 memories of my childhood.
I was saying this the other day because I have the same thing because I had all the sexual abuse as a child.
Yep.
And my mom handed me this pile of pictures of me like smiling and like enjoying my childhood. And like, I don't remember any of that. All I remember is the abuse.
Yep.
And the sexual abuse and the like dark parts.
Yep.
And so I was so grateful that she handed me these pictures because I've been like, I have them like hanging up now. They're like on my counter and I keep looking them because like I want to remember that. And we have that when we have a lot of trauma, we tend to just, that's where we go. Like it was all bad. Like it was all that. But it's like our brain sometimes.
Well, that's what trauma does. It
Yeah.
blocks things out to try to protect you because it doesn't. So essentially what trauma is a disconnect from the mind and the body. So people either do one or two things with trauma. They either block whole periods of their life out, and the trauma is really trying to block it all out. Like it doesn't even want you to remember the sexual abuse. It wants to block it all out. So, but sometimes the things that have the strongest energy, obviously, are the bad things that happen to you, like without a doubt. So, or it's the opposite. You will remember things, but you'll have no connection in your body to it. And this is one of the issues that we have in 12-step is that we like trauma dump all the time. Like I was physically abused, sexually abused. You know what I mean? You can say things, but you have no connection in your body to
You're
it.
intellectualizing it. You're not embodying
Exactly.
it.
Exactly.
So, and you talk about it, it becomes easy to talk about, but you're not actually feeling it.
Correct.
You're not actually connecting to the feelings that were attached
Exactly.
to the trauma.
And as a result of it, it still lives in your body, and you're still experiencing crazy anxiety when your girlfriend doesn't call in 3 hours because you think she's cheating on you because you were abandoned, and you know what I mean? You're still experiencing the trauma in your body. You just don't have any recollection to it being your mom abandoning you. You think it's you think it's whatever danger is in front of you right this moment when you're not even experiencing the danger that's in front of you because there really is no danger from your girlfriend not calling you for 2 hours, but you're locked up like you know what I mean? You're driving by her house, you're doing, I'm just speaking for myself here, okay? I did a lot of these things, but it was trauma responses. I didn't trust people. So since I didn't trust you, I had to do everything in my power to like try to make sure that you weren't going to hurt me. And so I had all these unhealthy behaviors that I used to, engage in. But the reason that I did those things is because literally I would be pulsing with anxiety, convinced that this person was betraying me from not calling me for an hour. This is a trauma response, right? It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
But so...
And then you create this identity about yourself that you're just this way. I'm just
Exactly.
overprotective. I'm just, it's
Yeah,
like...
I'm a jealous, crazy maniac.
Accept me how I am. It's just
Exactly.
how I am, right?
Yeah.
And you like call it fate. You're like, just who the fuck I am. So you're either going to like it or you're not. And
Exactly.
it's like, no,
Exactly.
it's trauma.
It's trauma. It's just trauma. But at 19 years, it became very obvious to me, or really it happened at 15 years. I started meditating at 15 years, and slowly but surely I started to awaken. And this is another thing that I share that irritates people. People do not like this, but I don't care. It's the truth. Meditation led me to divorce of my first marriage. Now,
Yes.
people say, what? What the fuck?
Spiritual work led me to my divorce too.
Exactly. But why is that? Because in my analytical mind, divorce is a sin, and I'm getting married for a lifetime commitment, right? So I'm never going to get divorced. I'm just going to do the right thing. I deeply believed in 12-step. I just do the right thing. I just, and so obviously my ex-wife and I lost a son, David. So for the first 5 years of our marriage, I thought when we get over David's death, we'll be okay. For the next 5 years, I thought, if I work more steps, if she works more steps, if it's her, it's me, it's just analyzing the situation. If I, maybe if I buy a dog from Japan, maybe if I buy a new car, I did these things. I bought a dog from Japan.
I know.
If I
was there.
You know what I mean? Is there some physical solution to something that, and eventually through meditation, I started meditating when I was 15 years sober. I think I got divorced when I had 17 or 18 years sober. Through meditation, it allowed me to go beyond the analytical, just like I talked about, right? And just sit with what was. And the energy of what was my kids were walking around on eggshells just like I did when I was a kid, because the energy in our home was fraught with anger and all these other emotions. And I definitely played a part in that, and she played a part in that. There was, but it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, is it harmonious or is it disharmonious? And it's not like I gave up on it. I gave it 10 years. You know what I mean? So I dedicated a lot of time in 10 years to trying to make it work. And it was disharmonious. It just was, right? And so sitting in meditation allowed me to come to a deeper truth of God, right? That isn't analytical, isn't divorce is a sin, right? Because again, I'm a Gnostic today, so I believe that like you should learn about God by yourself with your life experience. Life is God's way of teaching you.
It's everything.
About yourself. It's life. Life is your teacher.
It's nothing.
Exactly. God is everything or God is nothing, right? And so everything's happening in your life trying to teach you about yourself. But as mankind, we listen to other people and just adopt beliefs that, like, are they your beliefs? Because my belief is that being in a disharmonious marriage that's hurting everybody in it is not godly. That's what I believe today, right? And so God gave me the strength by surrendering to what was, not to what I wanted it to be, or I surrendered it. And sometimes, again, Jesus talked in seasons, right? Jesus talked that like everything has a season. There are seasons where sometimes things need to die, just like we were talking about, right? And so I was watering a dying plant. It was never going to grow again.
That's
it was
how
dying.
I felt in my marriage too.
It was dying, and it was okay that it was dying.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make me any less of a person, right? And so I had to let that die in order to plant something new. And now I'm remarried.
Well, and you should have that other thing of like the grass is greener on the other side, right? There's all these stories and these things that it makes you feel like you're doing something wrong. And I still had like a whole bunch of trauma, and I, went about my divorce like not in the greatest way and did things that hurt people, and but like, 'cause we're human. Like
Sure.
this is, and I again ended why I was suicidal, right? Because I did something morally wrong, felt horrible, couldn't believe that I did the things that I had did, through my own fear of, the lifestyle. I was like it was just so much. They're just, and you're like,
Yeah.
I don't know what's happening.
But again, it's asking you to let some of those pieces of yourself die. And if you didn't bring those pieces to the surface, then you can't this is the way that it works. This is just what happens. Okay. So I let that die, which born like a new awakening in me. Right. And so I really got on the healing path at that point, because at that point I was all in. And God was working in my life at that point anyways, because a lot of people in my life at that point who are analytical, just like me, rigid, this is right, this is wrong, they judged the shit out of me.
So rigid.
I was wicked
I
rigid.
used to think Justin didn't like me because he just had the worst resting bitch face all the time.
Exactly.
Little backstory. Justin and I met Justin, God, I was like a year and a half, 2 years sober, like dancing on bars, like bartending. And I was like, just finished hair school, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing in my life. And, they came up to New Hampshire, and, we built this beautiful thing together.
Yeah.
And which is going to lead us into this next part,
Yep.
and like that attachment to that identity, right? Like I had to walk away like from that situation, from not being like seen or honored, and it was just like a lot of that same rigid, like, you build something, you're a part of something, and then to just kind of have to separate it because it didn't align with, the path that you were on.
Sure. Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, so
the plant medicine, you decided.
yeah, so I decided I ultimately decided my first 10 years of my life, how could I heal something I can't even recall? So to pretend I'm healed is bullshit. And just like you said, the rigidity, the resting bitch face, the like not being able to truly embody being loving and caring. Like I could at moments if I trusted you, but like I like needed people to prove themselves to me, and you
Those
needed to
walls.
like work a certain walls, and you needed to work a certain program, or you needed to do a certain thing, but if you did, I was like a ride or die. I would love you unconditionally, right? So, but my rigid ways turned on me because I taught everybody this rigid way of like, you know, do it this way, do the right thing, always do the right thing. And then when people perceived that I didn't do the right thing by getting divorced, I mean, I'm talking people that I loved unconditionally for many, many years. A lot of them like judged me and they turned on me a little bit. But again, God has a hand in everything. So it kind of pushed me a little bit more away from the program. And eventually I decided I needed to do plant medicine to do healing. And it wasn't, it was like a decision that took time. I watched documentaries. I talked to people in my life about it, and they were like, no way, you can't do that. Like I talked to some close friends who were like longtime 12-step members, and they were like, dude, no way. Like, what are you doing? But eventually I sat in meditation, and it was like, no, we need to do this. And so I did plant medicine, ayahuasca, ceremonies with shamans. I wasn't like trying to get high. I wasn't trying to party. I was trying to heal, right? These sacraments.
Intentions.
Yes, intention matters. Correct. Intention matters. And I was using these sacraments for healing, plant medicine. These are medicines. They've been around for thousands of years. And used in the proper context, they can bring great healing to you. But at the same note, you know, they're difficult. Ultimately, what I think they do actually is they unbalance you even more than you already are unbalanced, so then you can surrender. So they don't bring light, they bring darkness, actually.
They expose.
They expose.
They expose the darkness. And
But-
you have to be really ready and really solid in who you are to know that the journey you're about to go on is probably going to fuck you up for a bit.
It's gonna, and it might,
expose.
well, it will fuck you up. And again, I'm not trying to, you know, I've just sat back and watched for years now. You know, it's like, and it will force change in your life, whether you like it or not. It will like destroy your life.
And if
It
you're
will-
doing anything that's not in alignment with your soul's purpose, it's going to expose it. So if you're in a job that you fucking hate, or you're in a relationship that
It
you
will
hate,
end.
it's going to end it.
Exactly.
It's going to end it.
But in it ending, you won't have a job and you won't be able to pay your bills, and you won't like, so it can create great, you know, suffering on
Yeah.
the physical plane. I will
Yeah.
say that. It will move pieces around, but it does not care about your physical well-being. It
No.
only cares about your soul's well-being and you learning your soul's purpose.
Yeah.
So I did plant medicine. Essentially, I kept it quiet for like a long time. Like, so I did it by myself for 2 years. Nobody knew.
I knew.
I know you knew, but when I say nobody, there was like a handful.
Yeah,
there was
no, I
like
know.
4 or 5 people that knew. The community did not know that I did plant medicine, right? And when I say the community, the 12-step community, because 12-step community is the biggest part of the recovery community. And then it came out that I did 12-step. I aligned myself with someone. I brought them to a ceremony. And it came out that I did 12-step, and everybody's thought on this was I just gave everybody the green light to relapse. That's how it was painted, right? That like, and people were saying that I am a devil doer and I'm leading everybody to darkness and the devil, and I just gave everybody a green light to relapse and all these other things, and none of that was true.
The villain. You're the big villain in the story.
I was a big villain. I
Big
was.
villain.
I was. Yes. Everybody.
I
I'm
love
talking.
being a villain. I'm a villain in a lot of people's story, but I'm just like, you know what?
It hurt my feelings, if I'm being honest. Like, I'm not going to pretend like that was like I didn't get empowered in it. I got really hurt because people that I knew for 20 plus years instantly just rejected me and turned their back on me, and it was painful, dude. But
That was the 3 years, right? That was the suicidal.
yes, that's
piece.
what led me to the suicidal piece. So essentially, I left Process Recovery Center over it. There was a big controversy around it, and everybody was very upset. I couldn't, everybody in the Nashua community was like, fucking fuck you, Justin, get away from us. I couldn't go to the office. I couldn't, and so I just bowed out. I chose to leave though. I chose to leave. But, I knew I was going to leave anyways. When I went to Greece,
Yeah.
I shared that with you. When I went to Greece, I was woken up at 3:00 in the morning every night. I was there by God with messages.
Well, Athens and Greece and the land there was like so beautiful and incredible. Like you vibrated differently.
Yeah, there's an energy there. It literally helped you to just. I had an awakening there. I had like a deep spiritual awakening while I was there. So, but I was told I was going to leave the Process Recovery Center while I was there. I told you, didn't I? While I was there.
And your bracelet broke in the
Yes,
water as
yeah.
we were talking about it.
I know.
We were sitting in the ocean on the black sand beach,
Yep. Yep.
and you were like fidgeting with your bracelet, like telling me that you knew that you were leaving,
Yeah.
and like the bracelet just like broke
Yep.
in the ocean.
Exactly. And again, that was a couple years before I actually left or something. So that wasn't
Because
this
you
was-
were on the plant medicine journey and you knew, because this is what
It wasn't in alignment.
It wasn't in alignment. So it exposes the things in our life
Yep.
that aren't in alignment.
But I couldn't make the decision to actually leave. So God was like, all right, I will make the decision for you. I think I did make the decision, actually. When I say I didn't make the decision, I did make the decision on the spiritual realm, and then the physical circumstances just transpired, right?
Well,
I could
because
have
you
just
empowered
chosen
it.
I could have just chosen to leave though, but I didn't physically I couldn't align my intuitive voice with my analytical voice. And so my analytical voice wasn't going to just blow up my life.
Yeah.
And so, but in blowing up my life, and so essentially what happened was I blew up my life. Like it was a huge controversy. Everybody was upset. The whole, NA community that I had attended for many, many years turned on me pretty hard. Everybody was like talking shit about me, like not just here. I'm talking across the country. Like I'm talking people like.
Well, that's the sickness of the community. It's like the 12-step community, and not everyone, right? Because there's like certain people, but there's a lot of judgment. A lot of you leave AA, like it's like this thing. Like if you're not doing it their way and their rigid way, then like you're like doomed to death and die. And
well, Bill W. didn't really believe in that. That wasn't what it was built on. But this is the issue that we have with institutions and community. I'm like pro community, but at that same note, if you look at Jesus actually didn't try to build community. It's interesting. If you watch him, he only tried to work on himself and then share the work he did with others. So he actually didn't physically, because the second that you try to do something, who's doing the building? When you try to build community, you're building the community now. When you just work on yourself, and then, I'm not saying communities will come together, I believe.
Yeah.
But at the same note, the more that people try to create structures around communities.
structured communities is different than like just people coming together.
Yes,
to, like,
people
heal.
just come. Yes, like
Right.
Jesus, when he spoke, people would just come together of all different walks of life. It didn't matter. And again, as much as I love 12-step and I think it's beautiful, it's become an institution
Oh yeah.
that is a little bit rigid now. And and again, I get it. And I'm not criticizing 12-step because I personally would be nowhere without it.
Right.
Right.
It was the foundation. I think that's what people need to understand it as. Is not a life sentence, right? Because I think that in the rigidity, you got to go to the meetings, you got to do these things, that they become a life sentence, but you can use it as a stepping stone. If you decide to stay in 12-step for your whole life, amazing. You found something that works for you. If you're not, if you're actually doing well, because there's a lot of people in there that have 25 years and they're like just working on the outside. They get the casket, but their internal condition doesn't match the outer reality.
And that's what happened to me. I had 19 years in my internal condition. I still was living on external things, and I was missing the point. I was like, I would get to the finish line. I would do all this work thinking that like, oh, when I get to this point, or when I open this business, or when I get this accomplishment. And then when I got there, I couldn't even experience it. I couldn't even be with it because it was all about just getting there. It wasn't, I wasn't capable of surrendering to just being with what was. Plant medicine taught me a lot about that.
Mm-hmm.
So, which I'm very grateful for. Like right this moment, in this moment, I've never been more harmonious and aligned in my life.
I feel the same way right now.
My spiritual practice this morning was going and getting my 2-year-old and just loving him and just being with him. Like, I did meditate for 10 minutes, but like, I don't need to be rigid about what I do anymore. I want the ability to wake up in the morning and just be who I am, be over that 50% like we were talking about. I don't want to have to do 12 different things to be okay.
Yeah.
Like, so I want to
just wake up and exist, and in your existence is happiness.
Exactly.
And knowing that existence means suffering and sadness, and there's going to be things that are going to happen. People are going to pass away. You're going to suffer. You're going to lose friends. Things are going to shift in life. And that if you can exist in the suffering and in the sadness, I don't want to say suffering, right? Because suffering's a choice, but like we lose people, right? Like things happen in the world where we're going to experience sadness and hurt and those feelings, right?
Yep.
And can you exist in that the same way that you exist in joy?
Exactly.
That's it. That's all it is.
And God always has lessons for you to learn. If you can't and you're truly suffering, it's because you're not understanding what it's trying to teach you.
Yeah,
it's that simple. If you're disharmonious, if you're struggling, it's because you're not surrendering. It's because there's pieces of yourself that you need to harmonize with what is. And again, this is a misteaching of mankind, right? That everything is always supposed to be good. Everything is always supposed to be growing. Jesus didn't teach that. Everything has a season. Winter is fucking cold.
Yeah.
It you know what I mean? It requires some strength. It requires some fortitude. It requires some dedication to true north.
Yeah.
Right? Winter's beautiful, actually. Winter's where the real, where you're preparing for real growth. Spring's coming. Exactly.
Hibernation.
Spring's coming right after winter. But winter is necessary. It is. So I went through a dark winter. Is essentially what happened in my life. I went through a dark winter. Everything that was part of my identity got stripped away. Everything.
And I think a lot of that too is people get really attached to identity with time and sponsorship and how many people and what they're doing and productivity and
I had none of that. What are you talking about?
Right.
I'm just kidding.
None of that. No, I know.
I was so attached to how many guys I sponsored, who I was, how I was fucking Mr. Narcotics Anonymous. I was so attached to my accomplishments, like that I had become successful in recovery, that I was attached to all that.
But that's the difference in playing God, right? That's where you play God, right? When you're there. And then to embody God is what,
So the hard part about it was, though, right, is I don't want to say that I was off. I don't think I was off the path the whole time, because again, that firm path did lead me to God. It did lead me to God. So I did synchronize with God, but only 50% of the time was the problem, right? And the other 50% of the time, I wasn't harmonious with God. And so but my desire to be closer to God and myself, I mean, essentially, get to know yourself, get to know God, right? This is the deal here.
Yeah, we are a part of it. We are a spark of the Creator.
You want to get close to God,
us.
just get close to yourself. That's the goal. That's the point. It's not about external action. And again, Jesus taught that. Jesus wasn't about rigidity. He flipped over tables and all this other stuff for people of the monarchy who were too rigid with their ways, right? So, but again, I would share it, right? And the energy, because God did make all that happen. All my success was due to God. I was just taking some credit for it. But I didn't realize I was taking credit for it, because I would share it on a podium and it would be God. I would be able to carry God's message and God's energy. But this is another issue, right? So I could share a great message, right? And everybody would be like, "Oh my God, that was fucking incredible," And I would give credit to God, but I still would be concerned with who I was in the story. I couldn't just I'd share I'd share at a meeting, or I'd share on a podium at a convention, and then when I got down, just like you said, resting bitch face, I'd be awkward. It's like fucking, like, for some reason I could channel it when I was speaking, but then, like, if I don't know you, I get awkward. You talk about awkward. I'm getting better at it. I'm less awkward than I've ever been.
You're doing amazing.
So, and I'd get off the podium and then people would be like, oh my God. And I'd be like, yeah, cool. Fucking thumbs up. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
you're like,
yeah, like calm down. I don't know who you are, you know, stay away from me.
the walls go back up.
Thank you.
Right,
Thank
the walls
you.
fall down.
Exactly.
And then, you know, because, well, that's your authentic, you know, and when I know when I used to share, right, it's like, just let me be a vessel. Let the one person hear the one thing that I need to, right? So you're calling God in. So a lot of the times when we're speaking, like a lot of the times even this, like in this area, like I'll be like, oh shit, I said that. Like it feels like, you know, because we're a vessel. We're a vessel of God. We share God's, you know, just like Jesus, just like all these great teachers that have come before us, we are the same.
We are the same.
We are the same.
But again, across the mankind is, I see this in musicians, right? Because we worked with a very famous musician, you know, DMX. God brought DMX to our doorstep, which was really cool, right? But why do people resonate with musicians so much? Because what you're hearing is God.
Right.
You're listening to God. Music,
DMX
vibration.
loved God.
Vibration is, yes, but here's the problem. You share God, right? Like the music that's coming out of you is godly. That's why we love it as human beings. That's why we respect it as human beings, because it touches a piece of God in us. That's why music has been a part of mankind's culture forever.
Yeah.
Okay? But when you take the music and then you take credit for it as your fucking identity, I'm the fucking man.
Right.
Right? You make Hollywood out of it. You make all this famous stuff out of it. Not every musician does this, just to be clear, but it's easy to do. We live in a culture that, like,
Idols.
fame, fortune, and all these things, we take credit for God's gifts, for expressions of God, and the second we start taking credit for it, we bear the cross. Yeah. Now we're experiencing something, but we're not in oneness, we're in separation. And again, DMX experienced separation. I saw it. I spent a lot of time with him, right? And so, and God bless his soul, you know? A beautiful man sharing a beautiful message.
So beautiful.
Right? But experiencing crazy separation still because he couldn't surrender to the oneness of the lessons. You know what I mean? The oneness of... And again, I don't. It's hard to explain. We all experience this, right? So,
it's a separation from self. It's not even like it's really a separation from everyone, but it's really deeply just a separation from yourself, and that's yourself as in God, like that.
I agree, and that's your sole responsibility of what you're doing here. And again, I do deeply appreciate outside people. You know what I mean, and their love and friendship, but. When I did the plant medicine, when the situation came where, like, essentially I got crucified by the community, you know, and it's pretty much what happened, and it's okay. God made me ask questions that I never would have been able to ask, that have strengthened who I am beyond, but brought me to my knees, brought me to a dark, ugly place, right? But do I care what everybody else thinks? Do I care what I think? I cared what everybody else thought. Having everybody else not like me, not, you know what I mean, crucify me for what I was doing and all this other stuff was very painful. My children, not like, you know, it disrupted my ability to make money, right? My career down the drain, potentially, you know. Like I got ran out of it. Like whether I questioned whether I was going to do treatment again, whether I ever could do treatment again. Most people in the treatment industry were talking shit about me. Right? So my whole livelihood in question, my whole, my identity as Mr. Recovery 12-step member, gone. Everybody gone. My identity as, you know, treatment center owner, gone. My identity as, you know, a person that people look to and admire, gone. But my identity as being a good provider for my children, gone. Questioning whether I was going to be able to provide for my children, on the table. But then here's the beautiful part about this, right? Now God asks me, what do your kids actually need? Do your kids need money? Or do your kids need you? Do they need your love? Who are you? What value are you bringing? Are you a paycheck? Is that where your value comes from? And honestly, for some reason, I did overly identify as a paycheck with my children.
But that's the male wound of being a provider.
I get it.
It's deep.
I get it. But dude, it was that brought that suicide came from that for sure. Like questioning whether I was going to be able to provide. And dude, luckily I had, my wife Christina has been a soldier from the day I met her. She's believed in me, dude.
She's incredible.
She's incredible. She's amazing. And God sent me her. But
I remember.
yeah. But again, and everybody questioned that. The fuck are you doing? But I knew.
You were like a little kid with a crush. It
Oh,
was
dude.
so at the gym, the girl at the gym.
Oh man. I'm so blessed. My wife is amazing. She's beautiful.
She's so beautiful.
We have 3 kids. Yeah.
Yeah, she's incredible.
Yeah, she's incredible.
Yes.
And
But
so
you're incredible, right?
yes, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But she was there. My kids were there. But I got to be honest. One of the things that plant medicine showed me, I had an experience in plant medicine, right, where I don't know about you, but plant medicine for me was very difficult. It was not. I had one experience. I did ayahuasca probably, 15 times. Like 15, nights or ceremonies.
I've only done it once, and I'm like, I don't know if I did it once 3 nights in a row, and I'm like, I don't know. Like, I am signed up to go again to a retreat in January, but I'm like,
it's torture.
I'm like, the people that do it 15, I have a friend that did it like 47 times. I'm like, that's not for me. Like,
I don't know how they do it.
I'm only doing it.
Yeah.
Because I know I have to go deeper with my healing.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to do it, and it's painful.
Super
Bufo's
painful.
different. I feel like for me, it is dark. There's a lot of darkness, but it's the feeling of oneness. That's what
thing
plant
with
medicine
Bufo
does.
for me is Bufo like forces you to surrender. You can't not surrender. In ayahuasca, you cannot surrender, and you will just be tortured in fucking hell for hours upon end. It's insane. It's like literally, and as you have the experience, you're like, I was tricked. This is devil doer juice. This is fucking you know what I mean? I was wrong. The devil does own the earth. Like, it makes you question all these things.
I was paralyzed in my pain for 8 hours.
I
And
get
the
it.
lesson was that I was holding on to my pain, and it was time to let it go.
So listen to this.
Like, fuck. You're like,
dude.
oh, I can let it go.
Oh,
okay.
dude, you'll die
Cool.
in the medicine. You'll literally
dead.
die. You die.
Yeah.
You die, and you have to deal with can you surrender? Can you let yourself die? So part of surrender is just letting things die.
Yeah.
Which again, archetypes of humankind, we don't want to let things
Letting
die. Death
parts
is
of
bad.
us die. Letting parts
Exactly.
of us die. Because it's
Death-
not true death. It's the parts.
Exactly.
It's the attachments to the identities, to the
Yes.
money, to the...
It's a deep esoteric teaching that is missed. It's just missed. And so as human beings, we just want everything to grow. We want it to be summer every fucking day. We want everything to be fucking great. We want it to be a sunny day.
Love and
every
light.
day.
Get the fuck
it's
outta here.
Yeah. And again, I appreciate the love and light when those days come, but there are dark days. But I got to be honest, my soul has been ready for the apocalypse my whole fucking life. I hate to say that. Not that I want apocalypse. I don't. But if it fucking comes... I just bought
We're
an
ready.
EV, so I'm probably fucking just being automatically driven to the entertainment center for extermination. So that might have been a mistake, but but I'm fucking ready. Anyways, I know there's a lot of apocalypse planners out there.
There's a lot of apocalypse planners for sure. But we've been waiting for the apocalypse since, what was it, 2000 it was going to happen. Y2K it was going to happen. It's like there's always going to be this apocalypse. Like, we're always just in that constant
I do think
state
people.
of fear.
My opinion is, I do think people should plan because AI is coming. It's going to be. It's advanced technology beyond us, and so is it that crazy to think that the lights couldn't get shut out tomorrow by AI?
Right.
And if the lights got shut out tomorrow and you couldn't buy fucking groceries or anything because the electrical grid went down, it would take 3 to 5 days for it to turn into chaos.
Right.
I hate to say that. I'm
well,
not
look at
trying
the
to
toilet
scare
paper.
people.
Look at the thing of COVID. Like, we could
Yeah.
still have electricity, and like people were like, fighting over toilet paper. So
For sure. So I mean, I'm not trying to get people paranoid, but I do think that people should be prepared to,
Experience that if it happens.
but again, if that happens and you've done your work, you're not scared because you know that you're more than just a human experience. You're a
Right.
soul. It's like if you read the Bhagavad Gita, it talks about him being too attached to his physical experience, and it asked him to go to war, and he didn't want to go to war because he loved his family members across the floor who were trying to attack him. But Krishna taught him that no, you are too attached to your physical experience, and doing the right thing here is to defend yourself. And if you're not attached to your experience, you're not worried, and you're just embodying and so again, I'm more of a Jesus teaching of I just love and light. You know what I mean? I just want to be love and light, and I don't. But at the same note, there are times where a firm hand might be required to defend yourself,
Yeah.
whatever that looks like. I mean, I'm not about attacking people. I'm not about, but I don't know. There's deep teachings. Again, there are teachings out there who address all these situations. It's not one way or the other. It's both. And there are times where you might need to surrender to something
The
that,
polarity.
yes,
Polarity.
exactly.
That's what exists. It's
Yeah.
not one, it's not the other, it's both.
So,
But we have 10 minutes.
all right.
So let's bring
Combine
it
it
home
all? All right.
with the
10 minutes.
plant medicines. Okay?
So plant medicine. So I had this experience in plant medicine, and this will bring it to where I'm at today, right? Where I took the medicine, I go to this dark, crazy place. Where I go to like a Clockwork Orange place that there's fucking clocks and confusion, and it's scary and it's confusing and it's deranged. Deranged would be a good word. And know what that is? I came to realize it took me 10 to 12 sessions to figure out what that was. That's my inner child's existence. That's, and my inner child is the best part of me that I've locked away that I need to heal. Because that inner child is the playful one who can experience things and be with things. And so I go to this place. Every time I go to that place, all I want is my wife and my kids. I just want my family. It's all I want. I want my family. But in ayahuasca, you know what I mean? You can't call things in. And so all I want is my family. So I have this one experience, right, where I'm in this deranged place. I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know why I do this medicine. This sucks. This is terrible. This is horrible. I've been tricked again. I should never do this again. This is insane. That goes on for hours. All I want is my family. The medicine won't even let me recall a memory of my wife or kids. I know that I have my wife and kids, but I can't even recall a memory of them. And it's torture. It's complete separation. I'm bawling my eyes out for 2 or 3 hours in complete separation. All I want is to be with my kids, and it's a no, right? After 2 or 3 hours, it allows me to see my kids, but I'm observing them. I'm not with them. But I got to be honest, it's 1,000 times better than not even be able to recall their existence. 1,000 times better. So I get to look down on them, and I see them playing, and I see my wife, and I see everything, and I'm still crying because I miss them, but I'm just grateful to be able to see them at this point, to just be almost close to them. And at the very end, it ends. And the one thing I like about ayahuasca is it just gives me it gives me what I need. I don't know. It's just the best. So as torturous as it is, as much as it sucks, it gives me a lesson. And so the lesson in that at that time was, this is the experience you're having right now. And if you died right now, this is what you would experience. Heaven on earth is right in front of you. It's there. It's already there. And you're fucking missing it. Because you're chasing the next business. You're chasing the next fucking accolade in 12 steps, speaking at a fucking convention. And heaven on earth is literally right there, and you can't experience it. And the reason I can't experience it is because as a child, my children are triggering my own child experience. And so I've always been a loving, caring father, but my oldest, my 16-year-old, still holds on to, you weren't there enough at times. She'll bring it up, and she's right. Because I was golfing and speaking at this experience and speaking at that experience. And ultimately, all the time that I gave to all these people, and again, I love 12-step, I love the people that have been in my journey, but I was feeding ego and admiration and all these other things when true love was in my home. and I'm leaving my home to give my time and energy when all I have is my time and energy. If I die today, I am going to be asked, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
good. Like God doesn't like judge your life. You review your own life. This is what happens. When you die, you're the one who is doing a life review, deciding, and all you have in this life is time and energy. And it's your responsibility to decide what you do with your time and energy. And it's a great responsibility. And you don't have as much time and energy as you think you do. And heaven on earth is already here if you're willing to surrender to what's in your life right now. I don't even care who you are. Obviously, I'm talking about my wife and kids, and I'm very blessed to have my wife and kids, but I've always been very blessed since I chose to get sober and get on this spiritual path. I've never gone without. There's always been love there for me. The greatest expression of it today is through my children and my wife, but there have been people in the program that have loved me like their son. And so everything I've ever desired is already here. It's like, it's
You just have
now.
to see it.
You just have to see. You just have to be with it.
And the plant medicines open your eyes to see it in a way, because I do. I want to talk about this too. The thing about plant medicine is it's not a quick fix. And
No.
I think a lot of people get this idea that they're going to like do this journey and they're going to heal. And it's like, no, it's the work that you do after the journey.
100%.
And you need to have good integration. You need to have good support. You need to know that it's going to probably rock you off of your path.
And if you're not ready, it can really harm you. Like I've seen people who had 6 months sober,
Yeah, don't
who
do
were
that.
doing singing bowls and really into spirituality and relapse within 2 days of doing medicine. I've seen it, right?
Yeah.
And I've seen other people who don't want to come back and integrate the reality of changes that they have to make. And they get to this place where they don't want to live anymore because this plane is too difficult and it sucks and they don't like it and they want to be back in the ether. I've seen people who were training to be shamans, like go to Peru,
Yeah.
end up in a mental ward because when they're called back, you have to integrate, you have to do the work. And sometimes what people do is they just want to go back to the medicine for a quick answer because yes, the answer is part of this. You know what I mean? Like what I just shared, when I heard that, it was exciting
Right.
because it gave me a piece of the puzzle that I was missing.
Yeah.
Right. So when you get the answers, it's exciting. It does give you like some energy, but that energy needs to be integrated into integrating in your life. And if you don't take it and integrate it into your life, then it's easy to just quickly go back to the medicine for another answer. And eventually there will be no answers. And it will be, my life is too much suffering. And I just want to be in the ethereal plane, because it does it removes the planes and it does show you that there is a plane beyond this. And so it doesn't.
It shows you oneness. It shows you your
Exactly.
connection to everything, and you feel that ability that you have to love and choose everything with love and understanding. And if you can't get there on this plane, you want to go back.
Exactly.
You constantly want to go back.
The reason I disagree with you with the suicide thing is because I don't think God judges. I think that, and again, I'm not saying I don't support suicide, just to be clear.
Yeah.
But I think if somebody's in so much pain that they left, are they doomed to torturous
I
existence?
don't think they're doomed to no, just like kind of stuck in the in between. I feel like there's this in between of the.
Well, I think you'll have to come
levels
back
of
and do it
consciousness.
again.
Right? Yeah, like
I
you'll
do
have
believe
to
in
come back and learn
reincarnation.
that. Yes, reincarnate. That's what I'm saying. You get stuck, you have to come back. You have to do it again, and it's probably going to be more painful. Right? The goal is that every evolution of your soul, every past life, right? You come and you learn a little bit more. You awaken.
I don't know if it's
and
going to
then
be
you-
more painful, though. I don't know. I mean, you think so? I don't know. Again, a thing I've seen in medicine too is, and I know we got 4 minutes here, everybody who's in pain and unconsciously suffering is still contributing to the whole.
Yeah.
They're contributing and contributing to the whole, like even their suffering is for you.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
To witness, 'cause we
so
have to
even if
witness.
they're hurting you, it doesn't fucking matter. They're participating. They've taken on the suffering as a soul, And so if they don't get the gift, because in ways I think it's a gift. I don't know, dude. I think there's some aspect.
Pain is a gift.
Yeah, but why do some
purpose.
people get to awaken and other people don't, and they just get stuck in the pain for the majority of the time? I don't want to
It's
pretend.
a choice. I think it's a
don't
conscious
know.
choice.
I don't know. I don't think so.
I think we get to choose whether we stay in our suffering or we choose to do fucking hard work and see ourselves and turn our pain into purpose instead of being a victim. I feel
I
like
don't know
people
if it's as
like
easy as a choice.
stuck.
Maybe it's as easy as a
Yeah.
choice. My issue with the choice argument is that the choice argument goes to addiction and everything else. And is it really just as easy as a choice? I just think it's deeper than that. And I do think that there are people unconsciously suffering here who are in service to you, to us. And
Oh yeah, they're my greatest teachers.
well, not only are they
know.
your greatest teachers, but they're also taking on the collective suffering. Right? They are part of the collective suffering, and that collective suffering is for all of us also. And so if you find somebody on the path that is just suffering and they haven't granted the gift of awakening, that person is still in service to your awakening, your soul. And when I say your awakening, I'm just not meaning, like, obviously if they trigger you, my wife and I were talking about this before we left out. If somebody triggers me, it's because I have more healing to do.
I always say that triggers are our greatest teachers. I say I'm happy. Could people be like, "Oh, you triggered me," because I'm still working a lot in treatment, and it's like, good. That's where your wound needs to be addressed. Like triggers are our teachers, greatest teachers.
So how do we wrap this up? We wrap this up with
You wrap it up. What's the thing? What's the thing like you wanna? I always say like, what's the one thing like all the lessons that combined and all the thing? What do you think is like the most important message you want to leave everybody with?
So my important message is this. I'm grateful for my journey, right? But my goal here on the work that I'm doing with people is to teach people that you don't need to take the linear journey to get to the destination. So you can just surrender and gain the strength before you take the action. So it's a feminine to masculine instead of masculine to feminine. What I mean by that is you can like run 10 miles and then convince yourself that you're strong enough to run 10 miles, or you can just surrender to running 10 miles and then you already have the strength of the 10 miles before you ran, if that makes sense. So it's like we already have in us what we need for the journey, but we're doing the journey first and then trying to prove to ourselves that we have what we need. Do you know what I mean? So like, it's like you have to get the accomplishment to prove to yourself that you're worthy. You're already worthy. So surrender to the worthiness, and then the accomplishment, you can just be with it. You don't have to prove yourself to yourself.
You get to just witness it.
Yes. So we all can just surrender to being who we are, which is a great gift.
The greatest gift.
That's
Big surrender.
yes.
Surrender's hard.
It's
And
yeah.
I think that that's in plant medicine, that surrendering in the plant medicine is when you get those moments of awareness.
Well, that's all that it's.
Yeah.
It's
The
a tool
greatest
for
gift.
doing that. Yeah.
It's
So-
a tool, not a solution. That's the best thing that I can say about it's a tool. There's a
Correct.
lot of tools.
And you should be called to it. You should not
Yes.
go seeking it out thinking it's going to fix you.
like a full body yes.
Yes.
Like no doubt in your mind that that's the path that you're
Correct.
supposed to go.
That everything's aligning to bring you there.
Yes.
Cool.
Well, thank you all so much for listening. Thank you for tuning in, Justin. It's always an honor. If you are struggling, Capital Recovery, he has a beautiful mansion with cold plunges and breath work, and the land is incredible. I just went and visited it a couple weeks ago. It's been so amazing to be on this journey with you. Shout out to 603 Podcasts for creating this space for us to share. If you're looking to start a podcast, they make it so great and easy for you. I hope you all have a beautiful Sunday. Thanks for tuning in and listening. And we're here to answer any and all questions.
Love you. Thank you.
Love you. Thank you. Bye.
We are sponsored by Soho Bistro and Lounge.